Today I'll be teaching you how to use AWS Web Application Firewall, and this is a full tutorial going through every single feature of AWS WAF that you'll be able to learn how to protect your websites against bad bots and common web exploits. And you want to learn this because the whole world is moving over into cloud, especially in AWS. So you have your workloads, your server, your WordPress content management system, databases, and so on and so forth, all running in AWS. And if you were to open up a website right now across the internet, you'll be able to see all these different bad bots, hackers targeting your website, and you want to be able to ensure that your website is high availability, it's accessible to the legitimate users. And in order for that to happen, you need something called AWS WAF. It's a layer 7 firewall that sits in front of your website, helping you protect against all these different threats, especially from your best friend, Mr. Hackaloy. Now, before we jump further, let's go over into the architecture of things. So the first thing you need is, of course, an internet connection. I mean, if you don't have an internet connection, how are you even watching this video? Number two is you need a laptop. So when you have a laptop, you'll be able to log in over into your AWS Management Console so that you can set up your server, configure your web application firewall. And finally, you need Color Linux so that you look cool when you log in over into AWS Management Console. So instead of looking like a script kiddie, you now look more like a real cybersecurity professional. In terms of architecture, of course, you have Mr. Hackaloy on the most left. So Mr. Hackaloy is going to be the attacker who will be targeting your website. And yes, you need him. Number two, you have CloudFriend. So CloudFriend is what we call as a CDN, a content delivery or content distribution network. And what it does is that it helps you replicate static objects like images, JavaScript, CSS, and so on over across the internet. So think of it this way. You have a picture of Mr. Hackaloy and you want to replicate it across the world. So you use a CDN for that. Next up, you have something called an Application Load Balancer, ALB. So this is where we are able to forward those requests over into a backend EC2 compute. And this compute will be, of course, hosting your WordPress content management system. And what the attackers typically would do is they will be sending, say, for example, high volumetric attacks to try to take down your site. Or at the same time, they could be injecting different things like SQL injection, cross-site scripting, and the list goes on. So with that, what we can do is to associate a web application firewall from AWS that could then help us protect against all these different type of attacks, ultimately terminating Mr. Hackaloy. And in today's class, we'll be learning about AWS WAF, and from there, what we can do is to think about what are the available rules that we can deploy immediately to protect our workloads. Two, we'll think about what are some of the traffic that we can quickly investigate on to see where are the attacks coming from. And number three, we can take a look at all these different other features and services that come along with AWS WAF to help us better protect against all these different type of threats. Are you ready, my friend? I already had 50 cups of coffee in preparation for this tutorial. So all you have to do is just drink another 200 cups of coffee and you'll be ready. So as you can see here, I have already logged in into the AWS Management Console, and all you got to do is go ahead and click under WAF and Shield, clicked on that, and we brought over into the service. And AWS WAF is a regional service, so it depends on which region you're operating out of. So in this case, you can see on the left side, we have all these different major features of AWS WAF. And the one that you'll be most working closely with is going to be what we call as the Web Access Control List. And in the Web Access Control List, you can click onto different regions. So in this case, if you're using the content delivery or content distribution network of CloudFriend, go ahead and click on that, and that will bring you over into the global region. So from here, we can click onto a single web ACL, or you can create a web ACL. So what I'm going to show you today is how to create a web access control list. So when you're creating a web access control list, there are a couple of resources that you can select on. So one is the CloudFriend distribution for global service, and number two are regional resources. So these are resources that are available in the region that you're operating out of. So if you have specific regions that you're running and you have, say, for example, an API gateway, application load balancer, and so on, you just have to select on those regional resources to have the security of AWS WAF associated with this different regional resources, and the protection will be immediate. It's seamless. You don't have to change any architecture part of things. So now moving on, I'll select back onto, say, Amazon CloudFront distribution. All right, you can give it a name, so you can call it like WordPress Web ACL, and you can give it a description. And of course, the good thing is we also have CloudWatch. So CloudWatch is AWS monitoring service, and this is a way for us to get metrics when there are triggers of, say, someone launching a denial service attack, someone hitting one of your managed rules of detecting SQL injection, and so on and so forth. So you can get those CloudWatch alerts being emitted over to you. And once you're ready, all you got to do is click onto Add AWS Resources, and we'll list down all those different resources that you have, say for your CloudFront distributions in the account, or in other cases, other regional resources that you have from the API gateways, ALBs, and so on and so forth. So you can easily select onto them, and the web access control list will immediately be associated and the protection will begin. Next up, you also have the web request body inspection. So this is part of the HTTP request that is coming in, and you want to see what is inside the body. So of course, in this case, we have the AWS WAF default limit is 16 kilobytes. So in that case, this is the default one. But if you want more, you want to inspect more part of the body because you have, say, a bigger JSON or whichever the case is, then in that situation, you can click onto the body size limit and select something higher, say like 64 kilobyte. But do understand, all right, settings over 16 kilobyte incur additional costs. So in this case, let's go ahead and select onto default body size limit, click next. And this is the interesting part, okay? This part over here called add rules and rule groups is critical. It's going to be the critical part of your web access control list. So you're determining who can access what on your website. So in this case, what we can do now is go ahead and click on our add rules. And there are two options here. The first option is called add manage rule groups. And the second option is add my own rules and rule groups. Add manage rule groups means that we are outsourcing, using all these easily available rules to help us set up the protection of our workloads. Say, for example, there are many different types of SQL injection, and you would have seen so many tutorials from this channel teaching you about SQL injection, teaching you about OS commands, injections, and so on and so forth. The list goes on, and there's so many different ways to place in the injection. So what we have here then are the different rules that are automatically added for us with all those technical details in terms of inspecting those web requests. So in that case, there are two parts to AWS managed rule groups. The first one are what we call as the paid rule groups. So these are the different type of rules that you want to be more specific in terms of detecting different type of threats. And the first one is called account creation fraud prevention. So this is where you have a registration page, and if the user was to register an account on your website, what you want to do is to see, hey, what are they trying to do? Are they using fraudulent accounts? Are they using temporary accounts to sign in? Are they impersonating as legitimate users? And in order to enable any of these rules, so all you got to do is click onto edit, and from edit, you'll be able to customize what is the scope of inspection, right? So as you scroll down further, you can see here we have things like registration page path. Right, so this is where you have your sign up form, right? So possibly it is, say for example, /register.php and whatnot, right? So that is the registration page path, account creation page path, and so on and so forth. So this is the place where you are placing all this different information because you may have a custom registration page, right? And what is the payload type? Is it JSON? Or is it form encoded so that you're able to take in a username as well as a password field or email address field as we are creating or logging in to different parts of the site? Okay, so any other primary address fields, and what's going to happen is they'll be inspecting all this value against the database records, saying that, hey, this email address has recently been appearing in certain data breaches, the passwords likewise too, and then it will be able to detect for you and block those different type of incoming registration. And to scroll down further, there are specific sub-rules within the rules. So you have, say for example, unsupported cognito IDP or requests, risk high automated browsers. Are these human activities? Are they a human coming in to your site? Are they using different types of browsers going to your site, registering different accounts on your site? Next up in the list, we have account takeover prevention. So this is where someone is logging in, possibly with a stolen credential stuffing attack, brute force logging attempts, and any of these anomalous login activities. Next up, we have bot control. So bot control is critical because there are two types of bots, the good bots as well as the not good bots. The good bots are like your search engine bots that could be hitting your site, helping you rank higher in terms of the search engine results that users key in those keywords into. So you want those good bots to come in, and you want to block out those bad bots. And bad bots can be bots that are automatically injecting malicious code into your site. They're crawling through your site. They're trying to find different pages. They're trying to find admin pages. They're sending OS command injection injection, SQL injection, cross-site scripting attacks. You want to block out those different types of bad bots. So likewise, all you got to do is add to web ACL and click on to edit. And once you're on the edit page, there are two types of bot control inspection level, the common as well as targeted. So what I'll do now is go ahead and select onto targeted. And there's also the capability of machine learning. And as you scroll down further, all right, you can see over here, we have the scope of inspection and we have different bot control rules. So what it does here, it also verifies, say, using reverse DNS to ensure that if you come in and you tell the website that you are coming in from Google as a Google bot, then we would check to see if your IP address truly belongs to Google, or perhaps you are just masquerading as from legitimate sources. So these are the things that can automatically be done from the bot control rule. And as you scroll down further, you can see all these different sub rules, like common rules, to see whether you are coming in from a scraping framework, search engine optimization, AI, social media, automated browsers, and so on. And scroll down further, there are more advanced rules, the targeted rules. So this is the part where there can also be tokens that are assigned to your browser. And we are checking and seeing if this particular token is being replicated to multiple browsers, multiple IP addresses, multiple client devices, which will signal the reuse of some of these tokens as part of targeting the site. So with that in mind, we are able to then think about what type of security protection you want to enable through AWS WAF to protect your site against all these different type of threats. Next, very important are all the free rule groups that come along with AWS WAF that you can freely use and deploy them into your web access control list to protect your website and workloads, particularly for those that are internet facing. So admin protection will protect against different type of login admin pages. Say for example, it could be like SQL manager. All right, then IP reputation is for us to look at those bad IPs, and these bad IPs are captured through Amazon Threat Intelligence. So these IP addresses have been scanning the site, they have been sending malicious code against other sites, and is being observed from the threat intelligence of Amazon. Number 3, we have anonymous IP lists. On this means that the IP addresses coming in, they're trying to mask their identity. So they're coming in from VPNs, proxies, Tor-nodes, and any other hosting providers. They're masking their original IP address. Core rule set and known bad inputs and the additional managed rules are rules that help us identify bad payloads that are targeting your site. Say for example, they are running an exploitation from a range of vulnerabilities, particularly those that are mapped to the Open Web Application Security Project Top 10 risks. And at any point of time, all you have to do is you can select onto, say, add to web ACL, and you can further click onto edit. And when you click on edit, you'll be able to see deeper information of the sub rules. And also there are versions available. So if there are specific versions that's working better for your website, go ahead and select onto those versions. And if you want to move to the next version of the rule, then what you can do is you can test them first in your testing environment before you place them into your production environment. So that's pro tip 101. Now, as you scroll down further, we have the scope of inspection, and you can see all these are the additional sub rules that you can decide to add them or not. So say for example, there is a user coming in with no user agent header. So it's likely a form of a script. And in that case, we are able to quickly block out those type of requests because there is no user agent. All right. There are also, say, for example, someone trying to do a server-side request forgery attack in the cookie header and so on and so forth. So you can easily investigate and read through all these different sub rules and be able to decide what are the rule actions. Perhaps there are certain ones that is specific to your application and you can easily override to allow, or in other cases, you can drop a CAPTCHA. You want to challenge and see whether the requester is truly a human behind the browser, or perhaps it is a robot. With many other sub rules available, you have to think about what is your workload on the back end. Is it running on Linux? What type of SQL database is it running on? Perhaps it's not even using a SQL database. Then in that case, you can apply different type of rules to help protect your workloads against all this higher likelihood type of attacks from going through. And once you're ready, just scroll all the way to the bottom and click on to add rules. So this would add the managed rules over into a web access control list. And the final part, as you can see here, is the default web ACL action for requests and don't match any rules. So in this case, what we're doing here is we're trying to detect malicious payloads, malicious requests. And if they don't hit any of this malicious requests, then we allow the user, because the user do not have those matches against those bad requests that we have added in as managed rules. So you can select under the default action of allow. There can also be other cases, which is a complete inverse of things. So in this case, say for example, you know exactly what type of HTTP methods, what type of URI, what type of headers. You're able to define those as a custom rule inside your web access control list, and then the default action will be blocked, because anything outside of the scope, you want to block them out as they do not fit into your, say, header or your key pair values that are coming in through the web requests. And finally, if you have any specific token domain lists, you can also add them in right here. So I'll go ahead and click on next. And here we have the rules. And the rules have to be prioritized. So the ones that are at higher will be inspected first before the ones subsequently. Okay, so it goes through rule 1, rule 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on and so forth. So there is a rule priority. And if those rules, say for example, if the user is coming in from a bad IP, immediately they will be blocked using the rule actions, the default rule actions. And they will not even go into the subsequent rules. So this is something important for you to think about. What are some of the other exceptions you want to place in? What is the priority of things? Say for example, you want a specific IP address to be able to access the site fully without going through any of these checks of whether the request is a malicious request. In that case, you could add something like an IP set that say that this IP address will be allowed access into the site fully without being scrutinized on their payloads. So particularly for users who are IT administrators, once you're ready, click on the next. And here you have the configure metrics. So this is the CloudWatch metric name that you can monitor. So anytime there is a hit, you'll be able to say, possibly send over in a simple notification service to get a notification, hey, there is a brute force attack, there is a denial of service attack from this IP address. So you are able to get those type of metrics coming in through CloudWatch. We also have the request sampling option. So this helps us see some of the requests that are hitting our workloads so that we can click in and see deeper what is the request like, what are the headers, what are the values, what is the match against those managed rules. Once you're ready, click on next. All right, so here we're reviewing through all of the information, scroll all the way down, and once you're ready, click on the create web ACL. Done. As simple as that, we have now created a web access control list. And the beautiful thing is that you can easily edit and configure any of them even after you have created many of these web access control lists. So as you can see here, I have already created another web access control list when I was creating my CloudFront distribution. So when you click over here, created by CloudFront, we can see the traffic and we are able to look at data feeds. So there's a very nice dashboard right here that we can easily use and navigate across, looking out for all this different traffic and matches, as well as bad payloads are coming in. So we can select the time range. So time range has two modes available for us: relative and absolute mode. So in this case, if we want to look at the last 3 hours, 12 hours, 1 day, we can just easily select on it, or any of this custom range. Absolute mode allow us to look back in time at specific time frames. So in that situation, we can dive deeper into those traffic. Say for example, there was a distributed denial of service attack yesterday, and you want to look at between that hour. So you can select through the absolute mode too. There are terminating rule actions, right? So terminating rule actions are when there is a specific rule that matched. What happened? Was it an allow? Was it block? Was there a capture challenge? Were we using a challenge to see what are the specific information coming in from the request? And if we scroll down further, we can see over here, all these are the different traffic. Right, so we have 2 tabs, all traffic as well as bot control traffic that we can easily look at into too. So over here we have the total traffic. So there are 474 requests that came in, 2 were blocked and 472 were allowed. Okay, and of course, without any guessing, I did some malicious payload and I was blocked out from those managed rules. And if you scroll down further, you can see a very beautiful dashboard that shows us what are the requests that was blocked at what time. And we can see over here on the bottom left, block and allowed. And on the right side, we have the top 10 rules. So these are the rules that you have included in your web access control list rules and when there are matches. So we can see over here, we have the AWS managed rules, common rule set block, as well as the allowed request. So this is dependent on the default action. And if we scroll down further, all right, whether there are any sample of bot detection, Are all of your requests coming from bots or a user, non-bots? So we are differentiating that. Client device types, so is it coming from desktop, mobile device, and so on. If you scroll down further, attack types, right? So we can see that we have different type of attack types, restricted extensions, top 10 countries. Of course, I'm based out of Singapore, so my traffic was coming in from my Kali Linux machine. That is also, of course, based out of Singapore. And if you scroll down further, all right, these are the different managed rule labels. All right, so you can go in if you want to further look at different rule labels that come along with the matches. You can easily filter by that too. So again, you can see here we have one match, request terminated by managed rule. Again, we are able to see those managed rules, common rule set. Now scrolling all the way back to the top, we're able to click onto the rules. So these are the rules that have been created by us. And one very important rule is called the rate-based rule. This rule is to help us stop denial of service attacks. So if you click under edit over here, or you can add it as a new rule. So when you're selecting it, you would select under the rate-based rule type, and this is where we have the rate limiting criteria. So say for example, your website typically receives, say, 100 requests every 1 minute or 5 minute evaluation window. And if someone comes right in and they hit 1000 rate limit or requests in that evaluation window, you want to be able to block them out, because it is unlikely a person that could be clicking so fast, who could be entering so much different type of requests against your workload. So in that case, you can set the rate limit here, as well as the evaluation window of say like 60 seconds, 120 seconds, 300 seconds, or 600 seconds. So all this are the evaluation window available. Next up, we have request aggregation. So we can directly get from the IP address from the request origin, or another situation that is quite common as well is IP address and header. So IP address and header, say for example, you have a system that is consolidating all these different client devices and forwarding them over to you. So in that case, if you want to inspect based on the X forwarded for, select under IP address in header, okay? And as you scroll down further, all right, what is the fallback for missing IP address? All right, do you consider it as a match, or do you have a no match for them? So, and likewise, like many of these rules is available for us, we can set the scope of inspection. All right, so maybe the different parts of your sites that are more popular, and the different parts of your site that are in some sense less popular. So in that situation, you can scope down further. So possibly certain countries, or you can also highlight certain URI path, certain query strings, certain headers information. So you can scope that down. And in a scope down statement like this, it matches the statement first before it runs the rule evaluation. And finally, what is the action? Is it to block, count, capture, challenge? What are you going to do if it matches? So that's the whole idea, running all of these different type of checks. So in that case, I'm going to change this over to block, and I'm going to scroll up, consider all requests. I'm going to select onto source IP address, and I can set this to a 1 minute evaluation window. So it's a simple WordPress site. So I'm not expecting massive number of requests per IP address. And then with that, I can go ahead and click save rule. So once that is saved, it will ask you to update in terms of the priority. So in this case, I have the rate-based rule right at the top because I want to evaluate through all these different requesters from the different IP addresses that are coming in. All right. Next is really important. It's called the web capacity unit. Ultimately, when the request comes in, a compute must run in order to check and inspect all these different requests based on the rules that you have set. So this is what we call its web capacity unit. So by default, as you can see here, it cannot exceed 5,000. And when you use more than 1,500 web capacity unit, it's going to affect the cost. So this is something to consider as well. So go ahead and click on save, and that would save your rules into the web ACL. And as you're creating different type of web access control lists, you have the associated AWS resources. So even when you don't associate them, during the creation of web ACL, you can associate or even change these associated AWS resources later on. So you can add AWS resources, you can remove them by clicking onto the associated AWS resource and just click disassociate. So the beautiful thing about AWS WAF is that you don't have to re-architect or change any of your network setup. So this is really beautiful. It automatically attaches to the resource and begin the protection of it. Next up, we have custom response bodies. So this is the part where you want a specific response. So if someone gets a hit, someone gets blocked, what is the response that you want to provide back to the user instead of the default, which is 403? Next up, we have logging and metrics, and this is particularly important because you want to investigate what are all of the requests that are coming in, and you can fine-tune your rules from there. So let's go ahead and click enable, and we have three options. The first option is of course CloudWatch Logs Log Group. So this is the place where you can easily set up metrics, filters, alarms, dashboards, and so on and so forth. The second one is Data File Host Stream. So this is able to collect all these different events in a lot more near real time, and you're able to do further filterings of things or even targeting them to ultimately an S3 bucket. And finally, I would say this is the lowest cost of all. So S3 bucket, you can likewise target a specific S3 bucket to store all of those requests that are hitting your AWS Web Access Control list. So in that case, let's go ahead and select onto CloudWatch Logs Log Group. And in this case, I'll click Create New. All right, so if you see over here, there's a guidance that select a log group in your account that begins with AWS WAF log. So let's go ahead and create just that. So I go ahead and select on this. I'll go ahead and do a right click. I'll click on the copy. I go over into CloudWatch. I'll give it a name. All right, so in this case, I'll give it a name of WordPress towards the end. All right, let's set the expiration to 5 days. Okay, and then go ahead and click create. So now we have created the CloudWatch Logs Log Group. All we got to do is go back into AWS WAF, go ahead and refresh on this, and select onto AWS WAF logs-WordPress. And once you have that, you can scroll down further. So if there are any specific fields that you want to redact or omit from the logs, you can select from here, because that could be some parts of the request that is sensitive, and you do not want someone who has access to the CloudWatch Logs Log Group to be able to view those information. So you can easily select on that. Any additional filters, all right, and then go ahead and click on Save. Done. All right, so now we have updated the login configuration. So the requests that are hitting your web access control list, your AWS WAF, they are going to be streamed over into CloudWatch 2. Next up, we have sample requests. Sample requests is going to be a very useful feature of AWS WAF because it helps us look into some of these requests that are coming in. So first, of course, we can filter the displayed data. For example, looking at all the allow requests, block requests, specific rules that are matching. And from there, we can get a graph of things. And if we scroll down further, the more important part is to look at all those requests that are coming in. In this case, you want to take note of the word of sample. If you want to look at all of the requests that are coming in, you go back over into CloudWatch where you have enabled logging. So in this case, we can go ahead and select under, say, the common rule set, and we can click onto the request. So we have things like script. I can click on that, and we can see over here, this is the source IP address, the rules that is a match. So we have AWS managed rules, common rule set, and a sub rule of cross-site scripting query argument, all right, or query arguments. And then we have all the request information over here. So this was sent by me. I was running the attack against the site. So if you see over here, we are on the site right now. This is the actual site. So if I clicked onto it, it will load. So this is the default WordPress installation that I have. And if I do something like /?, right, /? as equal hello, I hit enter on that, we have some kind of search. All right, so this is something that's installed by default with WordPress, which means that this is an injection point. This is a place of entry for bad actors. So if I was to enter things like script, all right, and I have alert, document.cookie, and I close the script, I hit enter on that, and boom, we get the following 403 error. We are blocking that bad request. So the request doesn't even hit onto the backend compute of EC2 or whichever technology you're using, a stack you're using to run your WordPress site. So this is an example of blocking those bad requests. Furthermore, if you see over here, I can run things like DIRB. So this is to look through all the possible pages that are on the site. So we are now targeting this specific URL, which is the one I'm hosting WordPress on. I hit enter on this, and we can see that we're crawling through the site, and we have things like .config, which is getting blocked. All right, we have 403. So all these are different types of common different pages that could possibly hold very sensitive or important information, and we are blocking through firewall 3. We're also blocking through the rate-based rule. So you can see here all responses to directories seem to be code 403 because we're blocking them out through the rate-based rule. So if I was to run this, say for example I do a -w, and we can see that we are getting more 403 now because we have a rate-based rule. So if I go ahead and click onto the link right now, you can see we have a 403. The reason is because we are running very, very high requests and we are getting blocked out for this volumetric attack. And this type of volumetric attack is called denial service, and typically it's run through several client devices or IP addresses targeting the site, and it's now getting blocked from the rate-based rule that we created earlier. Okay, last but not least, we have CloudWatch Log Insight. So this is the part that allow us to look for, say, top 100 IP addresses. I can click Run Query, and we'll be able to see what are the top IP addresses that are hitting our workload. So this is a very simple way for us to take a look at all those different bad IPs or IP addresses that are interacting with our site. And we have top 100 IP addresses, top 100 user agents. I can run the query again. And because we're using CloudWatch logs as a target destination for logging, we can see in this case we have Mozilla. We can also have an empty user agent, because I'm running through all these different scripts, code, whichever, and we are highlighting here as user agent empty. Next up is about bot control, and you can see here I've enabled the bot control rule set. So this helps us block out those bad bots on unverified bots or people who are masquerading, coming in from all these different good search engine bots. So I can head over into the bot control dashboard, and from bot control dashboard you can see over here that we have the created by CloudFront that has the bot control configured. So if I scroll down further, right, so over time if you're using an actual domain, you'll be seeing all of these different type of bots that are hitting your site, including good bots as well as bad bots. And you can see the metrics and information from here. And what I can show you now is to give you an example that we're masquerading as Bing bot. So over here you have the curl with the -a to demonstrate a change of user agent value, and we have Mozilla followed by Bing bot /2.0 and so on and so forth. So with that, if I hit enter on this, boom, we get requests blocked because we are masquerading as a search engine bot, but it is not the actual IP address that we're using from. And even if I have to use the default curl command to hit into the domain, I hit enter on that, we also get a request block because we have a strange user agent information or request that doesn't demonstrate there were a real user behind the request. Now when I hit over into the bot control dashboard, if I scroll down further, all the way down, you can see right here we have a browse bot activity. In this case, I can click onto curl, and from curl, we'll be able to see additional information here. So there is a curl command and it was blocked twice. For application integration, this is very useful in terms of making your bot control much smarter, as well as your account takeover prevention. So in this case, if you select onto the specific web ACL, there is a JavaScript software development kit that you can literally copy and paste it into your site that will then have challenge JavaScript sent over into the browser, which will also give them telemetry to confirm that the browser is a human rather than a robot. Scrolling back up, you also have CAPTCHA integration. So this is the customized placement of the CAPTCHA puzzle. So there could be specific parts of your site where you want a CAPTCHA challenge to show up. So you can likewise use the CAPTCHA JavaScript API integration right here. Regular expression pattern sets, it's pretty self-explanatory. So you can think of certain parts of your site that perhaps does not need to go through the WAF inspection. Say for example, your CSS, your JavaScript, and all these common files that you have. Perhaps they do not need to go through this type of inspection, looking out for cross-site scripting, SQL injection attacks, and so on. You can add those in right here. Rule groups allow us to create rules that can be reused by different web access control lists. So say for example, you have a certain set of rule groups you want to replicate and make them available, but they are not directly available through managed rules, and you have a custom setting for them. So maybe you are subscribed to certain exact type of threat intelligence, and they give you the payload information for things like log4j, and you can easily add that and make it available and accessible by the different web access control lists. So say for example, I enter the following of rule group example 1, and I have the region of CloudFront. I click next, and I can add a rule. So in this case, I have a custom rule A, and I can match the following statement. So perhaps in this situation, I have a single header, and a single header could be, say, user agent, and I have the match type all right, say for example in this case, contains SQL injection attack, because all of your user agent are sent over into a backend SQL for user analytics. So with that, I can go all the way down, I can click add rule. So once this rule has been added and it's made available as a rule group, all right, we have a capacity, and I can go ahead and click on to next, click next, and create rule group. So once I have the rule group, I can hit back over into web access control list, and from web access control list, I'll be able to click onto any of this web ACL. So let's say I click onto the created by CloudFront. I click on the rules, I click on the following of add my own rules and rule groups, and from here I can select on the rule group, and it will load all these different rules for us that has been created through the rule groups function. So over here I can enter, say, rule group from org, and I can select the rule group here. All right, so once we have that, I can go ahead and click add rule. So as simple as that. And while all this is happening, you can easily go over into CloudWatch logs, log groups. You can click over here. You can see the AWS WAF logs-WordPress, and you can investigate by scrolling down further, click on the search all log streams, and you can say filter by the past hour, and I can click on that, and we can display and expand our rows, and we can see more specific values of, for example, the action, was it allow, where you can see the IP address, where is it coming from, any matches against those managed rules that we have. So we can see all this different information directly available from CloudWatch logs log groups. So remember to subscribe and turn on notifications to the channel so that you do not get hacked. This is it. You have learned everything you need to know about web application firewall to get you started in protecting your internet-facing workloads. So go ahead, start running them, get experience for it. Whatever websites you're building that are going to be accessible by anyone, you want those managed rules right in there. So see you in the next tutorial.